This is Keyed In with Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. And now, here are your hosts, Max Rabin and Brent Jackson.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Keyed In podcast. I'm Max Rabin.
And I am Brent Jackson.
So Brent, we've bunched all of the top talent in Washington, D.C. into all of these recent shows. Shouldn't we be spreading this out a little bit?
No, we got to give the listeners what they want, the power players.
The super power players. Well, we have another power player on the show today. It's Matt McCormick with TTR Sotheby's International Realty. Matt McCormick is another agent who I've known since I started in the business, and he's been successful for multiple decades now. He's going to tell us a little about his career, where he started, and how to get to that level. And Matt, thanks for being here.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Why don't we start from the beginning, though? Why don't we talk about how you got into real estate, and when was that, and what was it like at that time?
Yeah, so that's like 1,000 years ago. I'm originally from Chicago, and wanted to get out of Chicago. I went to Tulane, and I was working for Hyatt Hotels, and I thought it was great. And I had a friend who was in commercial real estate up here, buddy of mine from college, and he said, you got to get out of the hotel business. That's a crappy business. Get up here and get into commercial real estate. So literally that night, I think I wrote up a resume. My girlfriend at the time helped me write it up. And Monday morning I was in DC, and he gave me a book back then. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have anything. It was called Black's Guide. And he said, here are the firms you got to go hit, right? So I interviewed with his firm. I thought it went well. And then he said, you got to get out of here because you can't be calling these other firms from our offices. I'm like, where am I going to go? He's like, go across the street, go over to International Square. So I go over to International Square in the food court, and I just start going out and hitting the street. And I'm dropping off my resumes. I'm sitting in the lobbies, and the receptionist is saying, no one to see you, come back later, leave a phone number. I didn't have a phone number. There was no number I could leave. So, during the breaks of all this, I kept going back to the food court. And there was a guy there. He was a shoe shine guy. He went to Boston University. He saw me coming. I'm looking a little dogged on the second day. He said, what's going on? You keep going and coming. I said, I'm trying to get into commercial real estate, and I can't break it. And he says, well, there's a payphone here. Just leave the number, and I'll answer, and I'll say it's your phone. I'm like, really?
Come on.
Yeah.
Sounds like a
honest to God, no.
It's ridiculous.
So I go out, I come back, he's jumping up and down. He goes, I got you an appointment. You got to be at Cushman Wakefield in a half an hour. Then you got to be at CB Commercial this afternoon. And Jones Lang wants to see you, but they want at 11 o'clock. And I told him you were booked at 11, so you're going there at 4. I'm like, why'd you tell him I was booked? He said, well, I didn't want to make him seem like you were too available. And
he was actually a good assistant because
he was awesome.
He knew how to play it.
Yeah, he knew how to play it. He told him I was booked, but I could come in at 4. And I was ready to go back to New Orleans. I said, I'm not going to get a job. And so that's kind of where it started. My first job was with CB Commercial.
So when was this? I mean, you said 1,000 years ago, but put it in
So that was 1984.
84?
Yeah, so I'm coming up on 40 years, believe it or not,
wow,
in this business.
Whoa.
Did you ever go back to the shoe shine guy?
Yeah, he was there. He had a bow tie. He had suspenders, and I think I gave him a bottle of champagne, and Luke did a photo. Actually, we have a photo it was Photoshopped. Where'd you do it? In the food court, right? We did, yeah. Yeah, where I'm standing next to a phone booth, and I said, what did we do it for? It was for social media, right? Yeah.
Is the shoe shine guy still there?
No,
he's gone.
In the food court, this is 40 years ago. He's still not there.
I mean, the shoe shine guy in general is like a lost art form.
Right.
I've been looking around for someone. They keep disappearing. I mean, you wear sneakers now. So
Everyone's going to sneakers. I mean, I was in New York, all the top Berluti, all the top shoe guys I was talking to, and they said post-COVID,
wow.
Now it's coming back, he said. The Berluti's got $2,200 basically tennis shoes I was looking at. And they're soft on the bottom, but they're leather on the top. That's sort of the new look. No one wants leather sole shoes anymore. I don't.
They're not comfortable.
No, I can't wear them. Forget it.
But I think Nordstrom's in Pentagon City, every once in a while I'll see the guy shining shoes, but I don't know his schedule.
There's
Yeah,
a guy at the
it's totally
airport
random.
that does it, but it is a lost art for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you got to be wearing the shoes at the time. Like I'm not going to go to the mall with my shoes on,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
it is a lost
Yeah,
art.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, so you started off your career then in the commercial
Yeah.
field here in DC.
Yep.
Leasing office buildings.
No,
what was
so
it?
I was 4 years at Coal Banker Commercial.
hmm
I was doing retail. And I started out, my first market was Prince George's County. And I didn't do office, I did retail. And half the guys in the office were saying, get out of retail, get out of Prince George's County. You need to be in office leasing downtown with the rest of us. And I met with this really smart guy named Jim Reed. He's a top guy, went to Harvard, really smart. And I said to him, what do you think? And I thought he was going to bring me on his team, right? You know, the young kid and woe is you, and I'm going to save you. And he's like, look, that's the best move. All these other cattle are chasing office deals. You're going, no one's on that path. You're going to be the expert. You're going to have that whole market. And sure enough, I became like, everyone in the Coal Banker office came to me for anything Prince George's County because, I was the defunct guy to go to. And I was in the top 5 within the region my second year, so
That's impressive.
yeah, it was a great move. So I did that for 5 years, and then I went to go work for Charles E. Smith. They took over their retail division. We had about 2 million square feet, and I did that for 10 years. The last big project, we did a lot of projects, but the last big project that I did was Potomac Yard Center. I don't know if you know where that is.
Yeah.
It's 650,000 square. It was on the old rail yard.
Right.
And it was a really cool site. There was a gate, and I had a red Jeep, and I used to go unlock the gate. I had the keys to the gate, and I would just go hauling around all through Potomac Yard. It was just an old, railroad yard.
Right.
Yeah. And there was, mud climbing and all kinds of stuff. I took the woman who was the business editor from the Washington Post through there. I can't remember, Catherine, and made her strap in. We had the top down, and she thought it was a blast. So that was my last kind of commercial project or retail project. And then I moved into the residential side of the business, where we're a REIT, and did that.
So going back on the commercial, if you can just give the listeners like a high level 30-second pitch on the difference between residential and commercial.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the obvious is commercial is very business, right? It was very 9 to 5, no emotions in the game. When you buttoned up for the day or the weekend, you just went home, right? And you came back to whatever problems or projects you were working on Monday. Sometimes you'd obviously work Saturday, whatever. Residential is completely the opposite. It's all emotions. It's all people's personal issues that you're involved in: death, divorce, financial distress, job relocation, promotion. It's all of those things. So, we're 50%, I think, realtors, and 50% everything else. From what veterinarian should I use? What psychiatrist should I see?
Right.
What marriage counselor? Who would you hire for a divorce attorney? We've all got this arsenal of who to go to for whatever your need is, right? And that's the big difference. And obviously residential is more, working around the clock. Now, a lot of that post-COVID has obviously changed. Commercial has become much more relaxed in the sense of how they dress, how they're working. COVID's had everyone working from home. So I think they've morphed a little bit, and people, with texting and emailing. But back then, they were like polar opposites.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the residential side of things, one of the things we talked about in our ninja selling classes was you immediately have to tune into the potential client's pain or pleasure. What are they going through?
Yeah.
Because it's always something. Even if they're an investor,
Yeah.
there's some kind of up or down aspect to what they're doing.
Yeah, you definitely, and that's something I'm not always so good at. When we go and do presentations, sometimes I end up overpowering and talking and driving through. And, one of these guys, Lou or Luke, is like either signaling me or texting me like, shut the F up. You're talking
Right.
too much. Listen to what they're saying. So, yeah, you've really got to put yourself in much more in what's going on in that current client's head.
Right, and that comes from your commercial background, I'm assuming, because as you just mentioned, it's like there's no emotion, it's nuts and bolts, if it makes sense or it doesn't, and then
Yeah, that was probably the biggest transition for me, is just the chaos that goes on in the residential world, and the people, the clients you're dealing with, that you look at them and you swear their hair is on fire because what they're saying makes no sense. So it's totally different in that respect, I think.
Maybe a little off topic, but I mean, post-COVID, looking back at the commercial aspect of real estate in the city and in all these cities, I mean, we're seeing a lot of shifts for the use of some of these buildings. I just saw a story today, the Universal buildings on Connecticut Avenue, which is right up the street here, massive commercial space being converted to like multi-use residential.
Yeah. I mean, I've read everything from the statistics in DC that 50% of the office space will be converted to multifamily.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't lay out, unfortunately, really well for gracious apartments because the ceiling heights are low in office buildings because they want to, in DC you have to maximize the height.
Right.
So you don't get these 9 and 10 foot ceilings, and the floor plates can be big. When you're dealing with 40,000 square feet, you only got so much window line. So it's not like if you go to Barcelona, for example, and you see these huge block long buildings. Well, most of those buildings are hollowed out in the middle, right? Because that's where the kids play soccer and run around and they walk the dogs. So these buildings aren't set up ideally, but for apartments, I think that is going to be a big play, and there'll probably be some mix. They might have some commercial in it, some residential, some retail, but definitely there's a conversion.
in the structure, like the stacks in the buildings are different as well. So I mean, it's going to be very expensive because you don't have, like, if you're doing 10 bathrooms per floor, you have to have 10 stacks of plumbing going vertical. So it's going to be expensive for
It's
these
very
developers.
expensive. And the other challenge is, unlike New York, where the economics work really well, you take a 8-story or 10-story building and you raise it, and you're putting up, they're putting up 60 and 100 foot
stories, yeah.
Yeah, 110, these enormous buildings.
Yeah.
In DC, we're restricted. You take down 10 stories, you can only put 10 stories back. So, the economics are not great. And DC construction is different than most cities because we're all concrete. All our buildings are concrete because they can squeeze out another floor to the height because you don't have the steel I-beams that require 18 inches. You're like 12 inches between floor plates. So it's expensive, and as you said, the plumbing, the core drilling, where the elevators are, you get these massive long halls. So it's definitely a challenge right now economically. But I do think that ultimately that's going to be the shift. It has to be.
So you mentioned you've been in the business for 4 decades, but like what era did you start in the residential field?
So I was basically in commercial for 20 years. I did 4 years at Coldwell Banker and 16 years at Charles E. Smith. And in 2003, we had the REIT. We took it public. I did the road show. I stayed through the merger. I was traveling all the time. I was on the road every week, all over the country. And
Can you just real quick
Yeah.
explain to our listeners what a REIT is that everyone knows?
So a REIT is a real estate investment trust, okay? And basically what it is really became popular probably 25 years ago. It's the conversion of hard assets into stock. So it was a great play for families. Like if you look at Washington, back in the day, Washington commercial real estate was really dominated by prominent Jewish community, leaders, whether it's Lerners or the Smiths or the Giwers, top tier families. And for a number of those families, and particularly and I worked for Smith, and that was really the premier company. We were the biggest in the city. And now it's JBG Smith. But when we went public, we took all these buildings and we took other people's building and rolled them into the REIT. So what it allowed the families to do, if you had multi-generational, is convert those fixed assets into stock. And they could divide it up amongst the family members, and there was no taxable hit to them. They didn't have to get a capital gains. Obviously, when they sold the stock or portions of the stock, they would pay a tax then. So it was a great maneuver for them. And then it also allowed people like pension funds and private investors, instead of investing in one building or two buildings, you put your money into a REIT and it was spread out over
The whole portfolio.
And typically REITs centralize on their whatever their area of expertise is. So we had a commercial REIT. We put all our commercial assets in, and that merged up with Vornado. We had a residential REIT, which merged into Archstone, became Archstone-Smith. But you have shopping center REITs, hotel REITs, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But and typically REIT stocks don't fluctuate greatly, so you don't get huge growth typically. But what you do is they typically pay out really nice dividends, so 5, 6, 7%, dividends. So it's a great investment for people who just want to be a little bit more conservative and get a dividend.
So when you say you were doing the road show, does that mean like you were shopping this around to different investment
private
firms to
equity
take?
guys.
Yeah, so Goldman Sachs took us public. They were our lead person, and we had to go to, do pitches, and we did them mostly. They're over a 2-week period, and you're going in and you're giving 20-minute pitches to like 10 guys in dark suits at the time.
Right.
It's like a modern day Shark Tank, right? Like you have the 3 guys up there, or with Susie Orman, you guys are doing your thing.
I'm thinking more of like the WeWork documentary, except his version of it was just walking in there and being a complete asshole. It's a little different.
Yeah, I mean, things were, back then it was very buttoned up, and it was very scripted, and everyone had their little component of it. And then they give, they tell you how you do, and the big banks take commitments, and kind of peg your stock to what your stock comes out. And it was kind of fun. We came out on the New York Stock Exchange, got to ring the bell and SRW
cool.
and all
That's awesome.
that stuff. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. But after that, I stayed on. I became the chief marketing officer for Archstone-Smith. So I had 2 offices. I had one in Denver and one in DC. I had a pretty good parachute under the merger agreement, and it was one of those things you had to use it or lose it kind of thing. And I thought, everyone loves me. I'm not going to exercise my parachute. My brother was really smart. He was a senior guy at Schwab. He says, I don't know. They're paying you a lot of money. Are they going to really keep you around? I'm like, are you kidding? I've been here 16 years. They're not going to let me go. He said, when do you have to give notice on this option? I said, October. He said, okay, here's what I want you to do. Take out a piece of paper on Monday. Write down how many emails you get, how many calls you get, how many people invite you to lunch, and you're going to have 3 columns: direct reports, vendors, under reports, friends, and then senior executives at your level. Okay? And then let's check in on Friday. Friday rolls around and give them the list. 10, 12, 18 senior executives, 0.
Right.
He says, you got a target on your back, Pat. You better exercise that agreement, because first downturn, you're the first guy they're letting go.
This is an awesome story. I'm sorry. This is great.
Yeah. And where this goes is kind of interesting. So fast forward, I got into residential, right? And I thought, I made the biggest mistake. Well, then a year later, Tishman Speyer and Lehman Brothers took Archstone-Smith private, right? And they did like $20 million in mezz debt. And then that is the deal that really brought down the financial markets, because Lehman took on all that mezz debt. Then Bear Stearns went, belly up, and they got stuck with all this debt. Plus they had all this other, real estate debt, and it, then was a house of cards. And the day that they took Archstone private, Tishman Speyer, they let go all the senior executives.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't have lasted more a year anyhow. It was, I was out the door.
If we put this in a nutshell, you had your finger in the entire collapse of the economy back in 2007 and 8.
Yeah, pretty much. I had the funny thing, and then I was, in residential. I had this client. He was in the National Symphony Orchestra, right? And I won't say his name, but he lived at the Ritz, and he was panicked about selling his place. And he would write these, we called them loopy emails at night. The world is collapsing, this, I've got to sell my apartment. I need it done. He was just like crazy about getting rid of this apartment. And he kept referencing, like, I've got really top sources. And I send the emails to my brother because he's in the financial market. He said, this guy he's crazy. Where is he getting all this stuff? He says, I've got really good sources. Fast forward, obviously he was right? The whole thing went down the tubes. And one day I picked up the Washington Post, and then it was the gala for the NSO, right? And I look at the governor's list, and I look at the people, and at the top of the list is Alan Greenspan. And I go, oh,
Who's his source?
that's his source. So I text my brother, and I'm like, Alan Greenspan. He's like, well, why did he tell us that? Of course, that's where, if we'd done that, we would have believed what he said. But, and then I saw him one day, and he came back to the building, and I just kind of went up to him and said, I know who your source was. And I said, Alan. And he just went, froze up, and ran off, wouldn't confirm it. But definitely that's where it
Didn't
came
take
from.
major sleuthing once you saw the Kennedy Center playbill,
Yeah,
right?
I was like, oh my God.
So
But-
circling back to when you first got in, so you got into the residential side like 2003?
2004. Yeah,
Four.
I took I ended up on a commercial at the end of 2003. We went to Africa and took some time off, and I was thinking I was going to retire. My brother's like, move to Florida was my plan. He's like, you're not rich enough, and you're too young. You're going to die. That's the dumbest idea. He said, take 6 months off and go back to work.
So 2004, the market's extremely hot. What's your first 2 years like coming out of commercial, coming back from Africa, and first 2 years in residential real estate?
Well, I thought residential real estate was going to be like shooting fish in a barrel, right? Coming from commercial, because that's what everyone in commercial thinks, especially back then. All the guys, looked at residential real estate as like, oh, that's housewife work, right? Like when I told all my friends that I was going into residential real estate, they thought I was nuts. They're like, are you kidding me? You have a stellar commercial career and you're going to go into residential real estate? But I was so burnt out on the corporate life. I thought, I'll do 2 weeks here, 2 weeks in Florida. This is going to be a piece of cake. Oh my God, I've never worked so hard. I mean, I came home, I was never used to being in an office with phones ringing. I had a big office. It was like the size of this room with 2 secretaries. I'd take naps on my couch, when I was in commercial. And I just wasn't used to being how to use a fax machine. And, why is this person talking on the phone next to me? And I literally, people on my team used to laugh because I used to say, I'd go to the boardroom, which was me going home for a nap. And Luke knows I still like I'm a big napper. But it was really hard. The transition was very hard. And, we did really well, I never thought this was going to be like a real job where I had to work. And then I was like, wow, we're making really good money. And
What was your first stop in residential? Where were you? Which brokerage?
I was at WFP.
WFP,
Yeah.
Washington Pine Properties.
Yeah.
Working on your own, or how did you set it up?
Excuse me. So I've never worked on my own because I can't do much. I'm really, pretty incapable. Luke, you'll attest that I can't do very little computer.
You can't do this interview without
with the
without
left out.
Luke's-
Yeah, Luke standing here.
So
and-
the listeners that are can't see the room, Luke is here on behalf of Matt to give him pointers and tips on everything because he needs a helping hand. So Luke
make
is
sure I don't say
right-hand
anything.
man.
Correct things for
So
this
far, so good.
record. Yeah, but no, I wanted to be on a team. I joined Ellen Morrell. Ben Roth was our assistant at the time. Patrick Chauvin was on our team, and I just like team structures a lot better. It just, especially in residential, when you're doing this 24/7. If you try to get away or you're sick or you got a wedding or a funeral, it's very hard to do it if you're just doing it by yourself. And so I've always been on a team structure. And because you can also pass off the stuff that you don't want to do to other people.
So do you remember your first couple of deals coming in? Where did they come from? Is it coming from the commercial side or through the sources at WFP or some other marketing initiative that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I first joined Ellen and Patrick, there was like any young guy. They didn't really care much about my background, and then all of a sudden I started popping some big leads, one of the Smiths wanting to buy the penthouse at the Ritz in Georgetown for $6 million. That was a big deal back then. And they're like, whoa, where'd that come from? And I'm like,
But
well,
you had like 20 years of contacts in
Yeah.
the business world.
right. So that really gave me a lot of leverage. I think I got a lot of leads, and I didn't know the business. It's certainly different. I had to learn it. So they were great. Ellen was great. Patrick was great, because I could, I'd bring in some big clients, and they would, help navigate it, or here's how you do the residential deals, and,
Mhm.
kind of mentored me. But I certainly had a lot of clients and leads. You needed help converting those.
We're with Matt McCormick from TTR Sotheby's International Realty. So you started off your residential career after what sounds like an amazing commercial career that ended with. Sounds like you took the golden parachute, which is the smart thing to do after all.
Right. I did.
So several years later, though, in between Washington Pine Properties and where you are now, when Compass moved to town, they scouted you out pretty heavily.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that and how that went?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a flyer. They recruited me pretty hard. The package they gave me was very, very lucrative. I had a long-term guarantee, couple-year guarantee, a big upfront, and it was a flyer. I knew there was a risk there, and if you were to say, was it successful for me? It wasn't. I was not very good at what my specific job was, which was really recruitment. And, recruiting realtors is a little bit like trying to herd cats.
Yes.
I just hated it, really, and I kind of.
Yeah, they want to listen to you, and then they just sort of flake off. It's like a cat.
Yeah, and they all want everything, and you're negotiating, and they're all divas. Everyone's a diva, and the ones you're trying to get.
As soon as you give them attention.
Yeah, and I just sucked at it. I really did. And so luckily for me, 6 months into it, they basically came to me and said, hey, you kind of suck at this, right? And you haven't recruited anyone, or the recruits you've gotten are not very good. And, you're out of here. I mean, we're going to send you back to the sales side. But I had a, really good contract that I had negotiated. And I will say about Compass, they honored it to the T. I got, every dime I was entitled to. And so financially, it was a good move. And I'm actually thankful that they, came to me 6 months in and said, you suck, and you're not good at this, because they were right, and they didn't drag it out. And so, it gave me the ability to transition. And then I decided to move over to Sotheby's from Compass. I just felt it was a better platform for my, the clients if I'm going back in. And I just, I had a great run at WFP. Bill, Dana, Mark, and Tom were fantastic to me. They're great leaders. But, I had done that, and I felt that might be a little repetitive. Mark Lohm was a long-term friend of mine. We were buddies together in the commercial world when he worked with West Group 30 years ago. In fact, when Mark went to go to Sotheby's, he called me up and he had lunch. He said, I'm taking a page out of your playbook. And I said, what? I said, I'm going into residential too. I'm gonna become one of the partners at Sotheby's. And I said, wow, that's great. And he wanted me to come, right then and there. And I wasn't ready to make the transition then. And I wanted to work with Michael. I had always told Michael Rankin, at some point in time we'll work together. Told that to Jonathan, even when Wall Stutt was around, and obviously Mark. And Dave DeSantis used to work on my team when I was in commercial. He at Smith. He started with me. That was sort of, so I thought it was great, and I'm still really good friends with all the people there, but I just wanted to do something different.
Right, so it's a fit.
Yeah.
So coming to the firm, TTR Sotheby's International Realty, can you kind of walk us through like the progression of, you came by yourself, you came with a team, we can go into like the team you have now, but like how did all that transpire?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I definitely wanted a team structure again, for the same reasons. I like working with people and, solving problems together. The structure we had when I was at WFP is we worked on everything together, right? So, and we split everything. the good thing about that is you get a pretty good steady income, right? It evens out because you're involved in all these different things. The bad part of that is you're involved in every deal, right? So, it became where we would get clients, and, my expertise would be, when things got a little complicated or difficult, I'd have to get in there and negotiate it out or deal with it. And, when you're dealing with a deal flow of 15 deals a month and you're in every one of those, and the client wants you in the call because you've got that sort of finder, grinder, and minder, and I wasn't grinder, but I was definitely minder. And it's just, so I didn't want that structure. So the structure we came up with, and I worked it out with Michael DeSantis. I don't know if you know Michael. If you haven't interviewed him, he'd be a good person to interview. Very, very smart about business coach. And he specializes in real estate, does a lot of people. I know he does Kira Epstein and
He's with Lauren Davis too. I
does
believe.
Lauren Davis. He's done work for Compass. He's done work for, I think, Sotheby's. He's really smart. And the structure we came up with is sort of more of a collaboration where our team, Premier Partners that we've built now, we're all partners. We're all equal members. So, we all have our own book of business. And we share business when we want to. We refer business if we want to, but we're not required to. But we share, we meet once a month, either by Zoom or in person. We socialize together. We just had our Christmas party, team party. And then we share some expenses, if we do a big client event or holiday gifts, holiday cards, website, social media, all of that stuff. Monthly newsletter. So we leverage off each other, and that's been great. And it's particularly good for me because I'm, 40 plus years in the business. I don't want to die at an open house. I can tell you that. I mean,
I think some agents do though.
You have to. Realtors don't retire, right? They just don't. I mean, they either die
At an open house.
At an open house,
Right.
or slipping down the stairs or something like that. But really, what happens is, people ask me, say, "When are you going to retire?" I said, well, you don't decide. It's really your clients that decide, right? Because all of a sudden they stop calling you. You send them a letter, or you see they're hiring someone else. They're like, "Dude, you're too old." I don't. Last time I met with you, you dropped the papers all over, and you just.
Right.
Why are you bringing paper?
Right.
Yeah, why are you bringing paper? Exactly. That's the first sign that it's time for you to get out of the business. But for me, I do want to have an exit strategy, right? And I think most agents don't kind of plan this out. And I don't want to do like cold stop. I want to, turn the business over to other people on the team and have them run with it and see how much mileage I can get out of that. Before they kick you out.
Yeah, so this is like there's a legacy proposition in your mind with the group of partners that you have right now.
Yeah, and I don't know how long that goes because let's be honest. I mean, at some point your partners go, okay, you've retired. You're in Florida, you're in Michigan, you're not around, so we're not sending you checks anymore. That gig is over. But ideally, I think. If I could do 5 more years of what I'm doing now, and if I could get 5 years on this sort of glide path out of the business, I'd be really pleased with that. But I don't know if the second 5, maybe it's 2 years or something. You don't know.
Well, maybe there's some really high quality leads in those 5 years that where you're like, you're going to have to give it back. Sorry,
Yeah.
You don't know.
So how many people are on the Premier Partners?
So we
now?
have 10 right now. They're 7 partners. And who else? 2 marketing and operations and 1 sales associate. And we're adding another sales associate in 2023.
So if one of our listeners, we have listeners all over the spectrum here, but if someone wants to join your group, is there like something you're looking for, whether it's an associate or another partner that wants to, they're on their own, they've been kind of floundering around, you're going into a recession or not, and they just want to be a part of something?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of people approach us, and we don't want to get too big. I think that, there are some groups out there that are pretty big, and then they just, you kind of lose that where you can bounce things off, and we all know each other. We spend and we like each other. So I wouldn't say no to that. I've floated a couple of names of different people, and I've gotten some resistance. I think if we're going into a new market, like we're looking at Annapolis, that market where we don't have coverage, but we don't want duplication, right? We don't need another downtown guy or Georgetown gal, or So if it's a market that we're not covering and we think that person's going to really bring value to us, something that we would look at.
And it sounds like it's a group decision. It's not like Matt wants this person. It's this person came to me, so now I'm going to share it with the 7 partners, and we're going to discuss it.
Oh yeah.
And have an idea.
I mean, early on, because we started as McCormick partners, right? And it was Honor, myself, and Justin Kitch, Honor Ingersoll and Justin, and no one really liked the idea of McCormick partners because the whole idea wasn't supposed to be about me, and they all knew I'm going to exit at some point in time. So that's how we migrated to Premier Partners. But so it's become much, much less about me. I'm just one vote, and every year I move further down the food chain in terms of who's the senior partner, if you will. So and I have an opinion, obviously, but I can't steamroll anyone.
So just
tried it, but I don't get away with it.
Like some of the marketing initiatives that you guys push out, like I'm assuming like social media for the group. If you're doing like end of the year sales, is it going to be like a flyer for everybody or a flyer for each person on what they sold?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we do a group flyer if we're doing a summary like that. And we also allow, like on our newsletter or on a direct mail piece, if someone's got a fabulous new listing and you might not have any things going on right now, we have no problem if you've got your A list and you want to, you're not involved in the listing, you hijack it, you take it. So some months you may not have a lot to report, right? So you've got the newsletter and you got to showcase some properties. And you'll showcase other team members' properties, and it's okay. We're not trying to pull the wool over on any client's eyes, but we're part of a team, and that's one of the advantages to take advantage of that.
I would assume that at this point in your career, like a lot of your business is coming from referrals. I mean, people you worked with and their network. I'm very involved in social media, and I'm constantly looking for new leads that way, and also through other marketing platforms. How do you? We had on Christopher Ritzert and Christy Weiss, who are also 2 extremely successful, experienced agents, and I didn't get the chance to ask them about this, and we had a conversation afterwards that was actually really funny, and I wish we had recorded it. What do you think of social media and a lot of the new marketing that's going into residential real estate?
That's a good question. I'm not very good at social media, right? And obviously people are very successful in that world, in that platform. I mean, look at Daniel Hyder, for example. I mean, he obviously knows how to leverage that business and been hugely successful in it. So I come from the world where we used to do, it was the old direct mail cards, right? And we had a lot of business from that. It was interesting. We used to meet with sellers, and like baseball cards, I had one client in Calorama, she saved up all the cards she got over a whole year, and she determined the agent she was going to hire by the stack of cards she got, whoever got her the most. And I think we were really close. We were like neck and neck with Rankin, and we beat him out for the listing.
I'm just curious real quick on that, cards over a year. So that's like being mailed once a month, once a week.
Yeah, we were sending cards. I think in direct mail back in the day, we were spending $60,000-$70,000 a year in direct mail when I was with Ben and Ellen. We did a card, I remember one time, it was after, I don't know if you guys were around, Max, I think you were on, it was like Snowmageddon, I think they called it, right? We had like 2 back-to-back snowstorms. They were like wiped DC out for 8 days, right? Each one was 5, and then got like 3 days, and then we got whopped again, right? We sent out a direct mail card, and we did them for all the neighborhoods. We did one for Georgetown, one for Kent, Wesley Heights, and we took photos of like cars in Georgetown that were like buried in snow and people digging out, and we sent out a card, and I think all it said was, "Are you ready for condo living?" And we got I think we got that spring. We got like 10 new listings from people like, oh, we got your snow card and we're so over a house. We're ready to sell this thing. So direct mail was
That's smart.
It was,
Yeah.
it was hugely effective. I mean, we got a lot of business, but so I don't,
That is kind of brilliant. Actually.
yeah. So we do social media, obviously. I would say my clientele skews a little older, obviously, demographically. So I don't have anyone call me up and saying, hey, I saw your TikTok and it blew me away.
Max does though.
I do.
Oh, you do amazing stuff, and I watch it. But
Appreciate it.
how is a 6-year-old? I mean, come on, really? Did someone want to watch me trying to do a TikTok? I mean, just
You'd be surprised.
I would watch you do a TikTok dance, like something like what's that Wednesday show on Netflix, and everybody's talking about it now. Maybe that's your next social media post.
I don't know. I just.
I don't think anyone's gonna make him do that.
No.
I don't know, but I mean,
I like watching it. I mean,
Yeah, I do too.
I definitely like watching it, but you have to have an art for it for sure.
Right.
I didn't even take a peek at HomeSnap this morning before our interview, but I know that you work in the high-end price brackets.
Right.
I'm sure do you know what his average sale price is on that?
I did pull it. So, I mean, HomeSnap has you at 2.42 on the listing side. And surprising to me, maybe this is what you're talking about. You had, a lot less on the buy side, but it was still high, 2.23. So it seems like you're really geared towards the sellers.
Yeah, I don't do too much buyer work anymore.
Okay.
Right? Because I'm just not following, real estate is like, if you're really good and you're at the top of your game, an A player, right? It's like following baseball. You got to follow it constantly. And the clients, obviously, now with all the apps and everything, they're getting listings as quick as and quicker than the realtors. So, when I started, Max, when you started, we had all the information. Would all either be a printout, it would be on our computer, but the clients didn't have access to that. So, we could wait a couple of days before we told them a new listing was coming. Now they know right away. So, from a buyer perspective, I'm just not on top of it. What's going on? I might be out of town or taking a nap. I don't know, And so I turn over most of my clients, buyer clients, to other people on the team and let them run with it. Just because I can't keep up with it,
It's a different energy level, and to be honest, I still deal with a lot of buyers, all kinds of price brackets, and every time I go out on like a first buyer tour, literally every time I'm like, I'm doing this again, because it's usually a time when I would rather be doing anything else, and you lined up like 6 or 7 properties, and you got to be on a schedule. There's a different energy level. I'm still, of course, doing this all the time, but it takes some time.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a repeat client, obviously, or someone who's referred to me that I've got to be involved in, but I usually bring a team member in, or if it's a really high profile, high net worth client, obviously, I'm going to be involved in it. But I think it's a different animal. I'm definitely better on the listing side than on the buying side.
Well, I think that's smart. I mean, agents across the board, they have to know their strengths and weaknesses. Not that you can't overcome your weakness, but again, if your strength is open houses and that's where you get your leads, go for it. But there's some agents that will tell me, I hate open houses. And I'm like, well, don't do them.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have bad energy. You're going to be there. You're pissed off. You're like, I don't want it. The one person comes through and you're mad at the world because you're getting ready to close up at whatever time they come in 5 minutes before. Like, go with your strength. If your strength is listings, go for it.
Yeah. I mean, open houses, I do them primarily. I'll do them at the Ritz because it's easy. I live there and I know the building so well, and there are a lot of nuances. But you're right. That's not probably one of my strengths, is picking up people. And I know there are people really good at doing open houses. Like Kyle Meeks on our team is phenomenal at open houses. And he's just got really great energy. He looks good. He just gets all fired up for it. It's like game day for him.
I've heard that throughout the industry, and he'd be a good for us to get on the podcast, because I've heard he does a lot of business off open houses, and there's an art to it.
He's always reaching out to our team to pick up open houses. And I'm like, gosh, this guy really wants to do an open house.
I talked to him yesterday. I'm like, Luke and I were running around delivering Christmas presents to clients. And he said, where are you? He's like, I'm in the office. I'm like, oh. He said, I got a potential client coming in. I'm like, oh, is it a buyer or a seller? He's like, It's a buyer who came to his open house on Swan Street, which, what's the price on Swan? 2.5?
Two,
2.2.
210.
So
It was a nice listing.
yeah, high-end buyer, and he was, they're coming in to interview him, and he got him from the open house. So he is really good. He gets all fired up for it.
Well, that's a just secondary question to this. So you as the listing agent, maybe you said if it's at the Ritz, you're happy to do it because you're right there. You know the building really well. That's going to be really helpful for your seller too, obviously, to have someone like you there. But if it's a larger house and that you don't feel like doing, or it's been multiple weeks on the market, what if your seller says like, who are you inviting to do the open house? We want you there. What do you do when you have a client like that? What do you say?
I think when we're pitching a listing, obviously I'm pitching myself, but I'm pitching our team too. And that's part of our stick, and that's part of our elevator speech, is that you're getting seasoned agents. So I try to bring someone in from the team, whether it's Honor or Carrie or Beth or Luke, if they're not already on the listing. But even on most of my listings, I have a co-lister, and part of the deal is they will do the open house. So I don't get pushback from our clients if it's not me particularly doing it.
Okay.
So,
in terms of the current market that we're in and the shift with things per the interest rate changes and everything else that's going on, how are you seeing that affecting the higher end market in general?
Well, a lot of my clients are cash buyers, right? And they used to put in, everyone put cash in the contract, right? No financing, no appraisal contingency. But then they would come to the table and, their financial advisor at Goldman Sachs or wherever they were would say, hey, take $1 million loan, because interest rates were, they're giving money away,
right?
2%, 3%. So even the cash guys showed up, with $1 million or $2 million loan because the money was so cheap.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to take it out of their portfolio. I don't think the upper bracket market is bulletproof. I thought that in maybe in 2008, because when 2008 hit, the first market that crumbled was, the lower price point, under $1 million, $500,000, $600,000. And, the upper bracket, the million plus, then $1 million plus was considered an upper bracket 20 years ago. Seemed kind of bulletproof. And I'm like, oh, and people would ask me all the time, is the financial downturn impacting your business? I'm like, no, we don't, it's perfectly fine. 2009 rolled around and our business just went down the tank. I mean, I think in all of 2009, I went from doing like $1 million in volume. I think I did $75,000. That was my income for 2009. I just totally cratered. Every market blew up. We're not going through that again. I mean, that was a whole different kettle of fish. But I think Washington, unlike a lot of markets like Miami or New York, we're pretty steady. I mean, we're not a really volatile market ever. I mean, we go up 5%. It's kind of, just sort of the steady climb. A lot of that's driven by government contractors. We're not, like New York, where these guys are getting these huge paydays, and, Wall Street can be, have these huge swings. So you see the same effect in real estate, or Miami, with the Latin markets coming in, or Hollywood. So we're kind of steady. I mean, obviously we had a big increase in COVID. Everyone got that bump, 20%. I don't see the market adjusting back down, giving all that gain up, if you will. I think we'll probably be, but, if we have 2 years of inflation at, 8 plus, 10 plus, those big gains in real estate that people got, get gobbled up, and, they may not realize it, but inflation is going to take some of that
back. It was
back.
priced in, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I think pricing is going to be flat. I think our biggest challenge we're all face is inventory. You've got people that are locked in, these great mortgages. So inventory is kind of locked up because of that, because they don't want to give up those mortgages. And you got a lot of people that are doing additions and renovations and all that stuff. So just the market is going to continue, I think, to be tight.
That's good intel.
All right, Matt, 40 years in real estate and 20-ish years in residential, you have to have some kind of ridiculous stories. Can you share just one with us?
Share one. This is when I was in commercial, and I was doing a lot of house flipping. We're all doing house flipping. Walls Todd, Mark Loam, Michael, everybody. And I had a really nice house in Calorama that I was flipping. And I was in commercial. I was like every other seller at the time. You're hiding out in the yard with the dog, watching the showing going on. And Aretha Franklin was going to come look at the house, right? So I had this great stereo system. It was before anyone really had great stereo systems, through the whole house. And I'm like, I'm going to put Aretha Franklin on. And they're like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. That's so rude. You're not supposed to know she's coming. I'm like, screw you. I'm putting that on. So she comes, I say, drive her up the driveway, let her go into the back of the house, and then bring the car down. I'm telling the agents what to do. I'm choreographing the whole thing. And then she can walk down the steps, walk out of the house. So I go over, I think I'm standing in Rakin's yard. He lived across the street from me at the time. And she comes in, they drive up the driveway. She gets out, she goes through the house. She's in there like 5 minutes. She comes down, she goes up to my agent, she pats him on the back and says something, and they kind of laugh. And she gets in her car and she drives off. So I go running over, of course, like any seller, right? What'd she say? Did she like the house? And she said, she didn't care much for the house, but she liked my taste in music.
That's funny.
Yeah. So I didn't get the sale from her.
Question though, did she buy something in DC at
I
the time?
don't think she did.
Okay.
No, I don't think she did.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Like, so this is what, 20 years, 30 years ago?
Yeah, that was like probably 1998, something like that.
Oh wow. Okay.
So curious, like, what is the price point in 1998 in Calorama?
So I sold that house. I bought it for $1 million. Guy gave me a loan back, which was a lot of money in that day. Then I sold it for like $2 million, and I
Right.
thought that was all the money in the world, right? Then we resold it again. I sold it for like 4.7, and then it just traded again. Patrick Chauvin and McFadden did a deal, and I think it traded for $10 million.
What?
So
Wow.
yeah,
What?
yeah.
Have you given a $10 million property?
I know.
1
I should
million
have
to
never
10
sold it.
million.
And I thought when I sold it for $2 million, I was like, oh my God, it's all the money in the world.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing the passage of time
Yeah.
with that stuff.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta that was one reason. I didn't realize you were doing those things too, because that's one of the things I wanted to ask Rankin if he would ever come on the show, is about all of that business that he did with the flipping of the different houses. I mean, that was a big.
We all did a lot of them.
Yeah.
Greg Bush did them.
Mm-hmm.
And, we bought, the formula was always, you bought it, you redid it, you lived in it, and
2
it was
years.
never for sale,
Right.
right? And it was sort of kind of make me move deal,
Right.
like someone, and there were always a handful of realtors, Bill Moody and stuff. And I had all kinds of people. One day I came home and Ted Kennedy was in my dining room, and Moody's like, you got to go away, take the dog or go for a walk or something. And, that was kind of,
Yeah. Yeah, it was just, again, also the acquisition prices at the time. And when you look back at that, you're like, you bought it for $1 million. At the time, $1 million in DC,
Oh
it
my
was like,
God.
oh my God, this is a large chunk of money for
Yeah.
this house with a lot of problems.
yeah.
But looking
They
back,
had a family that lived in it for 63 years.
Wow, yeah. Yeah.
Rotary phones and all kinds of stuff.
amazing.
But yeah, you could make money. But what got me convinced to move into the residential side is I do all this work for 2 years, and then I get to the settlement side, and it's like, wow, these realtors are doing pretty well. Residential guys, I mean, they're cleaning up. I'm doing all this work, and
So who was your agent when you were doing these flips?
Bill and Patrick,
Bill and Patrick were
Yeah,
your agents.
yeah.
Your listing agents.
right? Bill Moody and Patrick Chauvin. I think we did like 8 deals, 8 homes that I did with
It's
them.
amazing.
With
Um,
all of your stories, funny and probably some like sad and some drama stories, you should create like a little book of short stories for realtors.
There's
Oh, yeah.
definitely you could absolutely have like a very cool, like one of those classic real estate books from
Oh,
all
yeah.
that.
From all kinds of people, from politicians
Yeah.
to, I remember real quick, that same house, I was on the listing team, and the vice president at the time comes to look at it on a Saturday with this motorcade and all the cops and all that stuff. And the agent says, this is the realtor, and by the way, he did this house. And the vice president's like in August. He's got a coat and tie. He goes down in the basement. He's in the basement. He's in the furnace room, and it's like 100 degrees down there, right? And he starts going, "Hey, Matt, you got a flashlight?" And I'm like, "No." And he gets one of his Secret Service guys he knew was a smoker, comes down, and we're in the furnace room. And the vice president is like lighting the thing, trying to find out how old the furnace is. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be like a career-ending move, right? This furnace is going to completely blow up.
Oh my
And
God.
we were there for like 5 minutes, and I was just dying of the heat. I'm like, dude, it's an old furnace. Who cares?
But that's, they're all real estate stories. It's just who's involved.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
fun stories.
Yeah. Matt, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of this knowledge with us today and sharing your time with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's
It's been a pleasure.
been a lot of fun.
Brent has some rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
5 easy questions.
All right.
What is your food kryptonite?
Kryptonite, meaning like,
It's
What-
just
You can't say no, or
Oh.
it destroys you. I
It
don't,
destroys you. Like mine is like cookies. I see a cookie and I
yeah,
devour it.
I've got a soft spot for pizza, I think. Yeah.
Pizza.
Yeah. Problem is I can't eat like one slice. That and potato chips, yeah.
You have a go-to pizza spot here in DC?
Not here, but in Florida. I got a Pizza al Fresco. It's
Pizza
the
Al
only
Fresco.
restaurant I got any clout at.
Okay.
Who would play you in a movie?
Oh, Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise?
Oh, no
Perfect.
question.
Yeah,
Has
for
to be.
sure.
Has to be.
No
who-
second.
So you're going to step down. You have either Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk going to lead your team. Who would
Oh
it be?
God, it's got to be. Musk is just too wild. I couldn't.
wild.
I couldn't. Yeah.
He's scaring me lately. I have to say.
Yeah. I think it's either. He's either going to go to the moon or it's going to crash and burn. One of the
He's
two,
going to
right?
burn the moon up.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the two.
So you're going to New York City. I know you're a New York City fan. Plane, train, or automobile?
And it's funny. We just had this conversation. I haven't tried the bus, but there's a new jet bus.
Oh, yes, there is a bus.
Yeah.
Like a
But I
high-end
think
bus.
that takes too long. We just did the Acela. I'm not doing the Acela again. It's just,
What's up?
Why?
well, first of all, it's so easy for us to get to the Ritz. We can, to the airport from the Ritz. We can take the metro or we can take a car and be there in 10 minutes. We've got Clear. We go through Clear. So security is a breeze. And LaGuardia. Have you seen LaGuardia?
I've been to
since
the new. Yeah, I've been
Oh
there.
my
No.
God. They've spent $8 billion.
Yeah, it's very
which was
clean.
like a third world country before they started it, right? I mean, LaGuardia was the worst. It is amazing. And it's just it's quick. And they, as long as the planes are, you're not running into weather, I definitely think,
So what's your door-to-door time from the Ritz to whatever hotel or friend's place you're staying at in New York?
I think we can do the whole thing in like 2 hours or
Oh, wow,
under
that's
2 hours.
good.
It's really fast. I mean, the flight time is really like 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's so fast.
Yeah, so your Excel, you're what, 3 hours essentially door-to-door, maybe
And,
3.5.
what's changed is it's gotten very hard to get from the West End over to Union Station. The
Mhm.
traffic is
Yeah.
just gridlock.
Here's my New York trip hack because Ari and I have gone to the U.S. Open 2 years in a row. The first year we took Acela and like stayed in Midtown. Why? The tournament's in Queens. I was like, LaGuardia is in Queens next to the tennis facility. So we flew to LaGuardia. We arrived. It was like, this place is beautiful.
Yeah.
And we're in a car for like 10 minutes. We're at a hotel. We can walk to the tennis facility. That made for a super tennis fan. That's made life really easy.
And the price point, by the way, Amtrak is not, if you're doing a Acela.
I
and
think
you're-
it's cheaper than
flying's up
yeah.
is cheaper. I mean, it really, and the cab from Penn Station to like 57th Street where we were at Park Avenue was like 40 minutes.
And you definitely won't get on the subway, right?
Well, I do. We do the metro. I mean, I love the metro to the airport. I mean, it's easy. It's I've got that all figured out. I don't have the subway thing down, especially if you got luggage and we travel with the dog. So
Oh, yeah.
that I think is a little tough, but it's definitely I think the better way to go. One thing I did learn. This will be interesting. Who knew this? When I was in the back of the cab, they have the curb TV. Compass does like constant advertising. And I ran into a guy who was on Ryan Serhant's team. He's a really young guy, really sharp. And I kind of joked about it. He said, no, they get a lot of business from that. And it's really expensive to do it.
Oh, I'm sure it's super expensive.
Are they advertising the agent or a property?
They do agent and property. And a lot of the Compass agents, and I kind of, blew it off as a marketing thing. And he said, no, it's really effective. And I said, well, do you guys do it? And he goes, it's just a little expensive, but it works.
I was thinking about this the other day. I know we're off topic, but I go to the Wizard games on a regular basis, and I either drive or take Uber. And I started to think, like, even if I wanted to take a cab home, like, I don't see that many cabs in DC anymore.
They're really, it's really hard to find a cab just on the street.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, at airport, fine, or Union Station, great. But if you're just randomly in Penn Quarter, you need.
I'm going to Kennedy Center tonight, and if you come out of the Kennedy Center and you're not like first one out, you're waiting for a cab.
Yeah.
For
Now,
sure.
I mean, the only places I think you really find taxis in DC anymore is at the airport.
Right.
There's always a line there taking people, because it's hard to find an Uber.
Last question here.
Yep.
You've talked a lot about naps today. Where is the best place to take a nap?
Oh, I can take a nap pretty much anywhere, but it's got to be at a certain time. It's like between 4 and 5 o'clock.
That's an art.
Yeah, and I got to turn off the phone. And, I'm one of these people, I fall asleep. I don't need an alarm to wake me up. It's always an hour, and I wake up. But no one can get me. Like Rankin was trying to get me, came running into our office. It was something to do with the Wall Street Journal that we were trying to do. And he's like, you get Matt. You got to get him on the phone. And Luke's like, I can't. He's just unreachable,
He's unconscious.
But at 5:01, he'll come back to life, and that's when he'll resurface. And
So,
that's when we're gonna-
but you have to go back home to take the nap?
well, when I was at commercial days, I'd just nap in my office, right? Just shut the
it's like,
door.
what is it, George from
Yeah,
Seinfeld underneath
yeah.
the desk?
I'm also picturing like
Yeah, I've done that too.
John Hamm on Mad Men, like just crashing on his couch in the
Yeah,
middle.
'cause
Of
he
course,
had
they're hammered though.
He had 2 martinis,
Right,
right?
yeah.
We weren't. I wasn't part of the martini crowd,
Mhm.
That was generation before me. But just pretty much anywhere I could,
And that seems late in the day. Like for me,
That's almost bedtime for you.
that's almost bedtime. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm finishing up dinner. I'm wrapping up stuff. I'm going
well, you
to
got
bed
kids,
at
you got
7.
little kids, and
But like,
right?
so if you're getting up at 5 p.m., like when do you go to bed?
I go to bed early. So what I do is I will literally take a nap from 4 to 5, shut my world down, turn off my phone, and then I get up at 5, and for like a half an hour, I'm responding to all the stuff
Right.
that came in. So now I got like 20 new emails, and I'll just lie there and I'll just like bang out some texts, bang out some emails, and then wrap it all up by 6.
I love it.
Yeah.
I can see it in one of the
Genius.
Ritz-Carlton penthouse listing. You see this from other agents. It's like, do not disturb agent from 4 to 5 p.m.
Yeah,
every
everyone on
day
my
of the
team,
week.
They know.
they know. They all know. People even, I've even had other agents like Courtney Abrams and I were doing a deal, and she called me at 5:05, and she said, I know you're unreachable. I've already been told not to try to reach you at between 4 and 5.
I love this.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I think I could add that to my repertoire.
Yes.
Matt, this is awesome. Really fantastic.
Thank you. It's been fun, and I'll watch. I haven't listened to him, but Luke has downloaded your thing on my phone, so I will.
You have to listen to it as you doze off at 4
Yeah.
o'clock today.
I have to. I'm really don't know the podcast world, so I have to
Right.
explore that.
Well, I mean, that's what I love the most right now. I used to listen to like the news all day in the car, and now it's just all podcasts. Like I have my favorites, and I'm always out there to try something new and listen.
Luke listens to him all day while he works.
Hmm.
When we're not in the office, he's always got a podcast going.
Yeah.
So
They're good. They're
Yeah.
they can be entertaining. They can be informative. Whatever
Right.
you're into.
You can pick up a lot of things just by osmosis if it's just on. You'd be surprised.
what's this going to be? Is anyone going to is there people going to listen to this?
We get
We-
about 1,000
absolutely.
plus listeners per episode.
Really?
Yeah.
They're going to get 5 minutes into this interview and go, okay,
Well,
wait till
but
next
that's
one
also
comes
part
out.
of it. People get in their car or they go on a walk and they put on a podcast for a few minutes and then they flip around or do something else. They come back to it.
Yeah.
And but yeah, people like it. They really enjoy it.
Good.
Thank you for coming onto the show. We always give a shout out to a charity of our guest choice. Is there anybody you want us to give a shout out to?
I would say probably Peggy Adams, which is a dog fund in Palm Beach.
Okay.
And she rescues dogs. So
Great.
that's probably would be my go-to. I'm big into dogs.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Keyed In with your hosts, Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. For more information on selling your home, find us online at keyedinpodcast.com. Remember to subscribe to Keyed In on Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Keyed In Podcast, at Rabin Max, and at Brent E. Jackson. And follow Max on TikTok at MaxwellRabin_properties.